Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a Watcher of Realms video. Today I am joined by the infamous Ash. Dude, how you doing?
Hades, what's up, the infamous Hell Hades? How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Doing really well. Look, I'm excited for this one because
Me too.
we're both coming from a different game. We're both coming from Raid Shadow Legends. I guess we're well known in that community. We're both trying to break into Watcher of Realms and honestly, like, really enjoying this game. But I wanted to do a bit of a comparison, really. Like, what do we like about the two when you put them side by side? Like, which features worked really well in different games and why? So yeah, really on to get your thoughts, get your kind of thoughts on this topic. I guess, dude, where do you want to start? These games are so deep.
Right?
Where should we go?
Well, first off, I want to say that, like, not to be cheesy to start things out, but the way that both of these games are similar is they both have, especially you don't see this very often in gaming, is they both have really badass communities, man. Like they're
Yeah,
both like instead of obviously you'll get occasional critical comments, right? But and that's to be expected anywhere on the internet. But for the most part, like they want you to succeed, they want to help you, they want to, make corrections or give you suggestions or advice in both games. And then at the same time, the content creators too, especially in Watchers, I see you collabing with the same guys and gals that
yeah,
I am as well. But they've been like incredibly generous because let's be real, man. When you come, me and you come from like we're known people or whatever in a different game that's in a same vertical, and you come all of a sudden into the community after a couple months of everybody just like getting to know everybody.
yeah.
Sometimes it can be seen as like, dude, these noobs are trying to come in and like whatever,
For
and
sure. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been exactly the opposite. They've been super gracious and kind to both of us. So the community has been amazing in both of these games, frankly, for me, starting in other games as well. So I guess that's a
Yeah.
starting point.
Yeah, and I guess it's worth saying as well, we've
Yeah.
just done a video on your channel where we were talking about some of the mistakes that we've made or the things we wouldn't have done again. I'll link that down below because it's well worth a watch, and obviously go and subscribe to Ash on his Watchers channel. But yeah, I mean, we spoke about some of the things we're going to touch on here, so it kind of makes some sense. But I guess, look, we've spoken about these kind of like cool games from different verticals, but in terms of the heroes in these games, like, I think nowadays, we're kind of like touching on a point where you've got to nail this. You've got to nail visuals. And I don't know if I've really got a preference between the two because actually, Raid was the OG, I'd say, in terms of a game that really came in and has nailed the visual aspects for a mobile game. Yeah, a mobile game, it kind of scratched the itch for me in terms of, I'm an ex MMO player, and I kind of like that kind of fantasy vibe. I like the whole kind of like mages and tanks and healers and all that type of stuff. So that works for me. But I think both games have actually, if I was rating them out of 5, it's a 5 out of 5 for both. What's your view, man? Have you got a preference?
No, I think initially when I picked up Watchers, I was maybe very slightly preferred Raid because it's what I'm used to. The aesthetic is very similar, but it's a little bit different too. It's hard to describe,
Yeah,
right? But and now that it might actually be opposite. It might have flip-flopped a little tiny bit. Either way, they're both incredible, right? The aesthetics, the visuals, and these games are great. I do love that they have like the full all out animations for a lot of, especially like the lords and some of the better heroes and watchers. And it really adds to that hype, especially when you summon them.
yeah,
So maybe that gives watchers the edge. But yeah, aesthetically, both these games are just S tier in the genre.
yeah. And you think about, obviously, like a new game having to burst on the scene. So something like Watchers is looking at what their competition already do and why it's good. And obviously, like you say here, they're putting in the almost the cinematics on some
Yeah,
of
you
the
get that
heroes.
cutscene.
I mean,
Yeah.
man, it's actually very cool. Like, you don't. It actually costs a fair amount to do this sort of stuff. Like, they're doing it. You're going to watch it once. You're probably not watching it again. So you have to weigh up that as a developer. You're weighing up that cost versus reward. But actually, to give their game that kind of like spruce, like little cherry on top, they do it really well. They do it really well. And to your point, it's not the same as Raid in terms of graphic style, but there's kind of like similarities, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, both games for me like knock it out the park on this stuff.
Same.
What about in terms of like hero, as I'm on heroes here, like hero progression, the ways you can kind of level up, skill up. Do you have a preference here?
Yeah, for me, I would give, so first of all, it's very interesting. Heroes compared to champions in Raid. Heroes,
Mm.
first of all, just the actual like UI and the ease of leveling up is, I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 in Watchers and a 1 out of
Yeah.
10 in Raid, right? So like, let's start there. The back end of the quick upgrade is or quick ascend, whatever it's called, is amazing in Watchers.
Yeah.
It's so less tedious. It's amazing. But I would definitely give Raid the obvious edge in the variety and volume of champions, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfair because it's years and years and years older, but you definitely do feel the I don't want to say the limitation, but you feel like, okay, man, I've been playing for 3 months and I have half the heroes in the game. You know,
Yeah. And actually, in fairness, like Watchers has released with a lot more than most hero collectors do release with, right? So we see quite a few come out with 40, 50, and you're like, dude, I've collected them all in a week. Like, you know, it's yeah. So I mean, we're talking close to 150 on Watchers versus Raid now over 800.
800, yeah.
It's hugely different. Like, and like you say, just releasing with that many would be almost impossible for a company to do. It would take years of development just to heroes if you were trying to release with an equal amount to Raid. So, but yeah, you have to give it to Raid that not only do they have that many, when they release new heroes, they still do a good job of making them fairly unique, have cool passives, have cool kind of like, you know, skill abilities. Yeah, there's going to be some crossover, but actually Raid do a good job of this. Like, you can't argue with that. It's
there's no
well
doubt.
done.
You can tell that Watchers, I mean, I don't think it's a secret. I mean, probably you could say this about every game, right? But they took a lot of inspiration from Raid in terms of, you know, the heroes, how you upgrade them, you know, a lot of stats, everything, right?
Yeah.
What they really, I'm interested to hear what you feel about this, Hades, because the interesting thing about this game is two kind of weird things that are at odds. It coexist, right? And that would be, they give you a lot of really good free heroes in this
Yeah.
game. Mari, Wrath, Oleg, and others, right? There's also, man, I was surprised at how crappy 99% of rares and below are. Like, if you're not, I mean, there's a few like the Poisoners, right? The Cuke in company, I will say, right? And maybe one or two others, right? Like you can get inspiration. I forgot her name, but the girl with the little lantern. But
yeah,
so there's
is usable. Yeah. But yeah,
there's
the majority.
couple,
yeah.
But it's not like Raid, where Raid legitimately there's you know, probably like 20 or 30 like solid rares. And again, part of that's a volume issue. But I just noticed that this game just, it feels like everything's pushing you towards epic and legendary heroes, whereas there's a bit more of a variety in Raid. I'm not sure, again, if that's testament to the longevity of the game or not. At the same time, though, they give you a lot of good freebies too, so it's hard to complain. How do you feel about like that?
Yeah, I think they balanced it quite well. I think they do push you to go beyond rare very quickly. Mainly in their stats, actually. There's not the base stats of rares is very low in Watchers, which kind of pushes you to have to go to epics and above relatively quickly. Otherwise, you just won't survive. Like, you just won't have the health to be able to kind of deal with anything. What I do like in the kind of style they've done Watchers is the Lord system. So even having a rare Lord is cool. Like, you definitely don't want to get rid of any of those Lords, because
Lord feels better than auras by quite a bit, right?
But the cool thing with it is, you actually don't necessarily need to play the Lord in your team. You don't need to gear them. You don't need to level them. You just need them on your squad, and then you start to gain that bonus, right? So you know, I've got, for example, my Guild Boss team. Can't show you an actual run because I've already done it, but I can show you my stats. And my Lord is in there. She's not geared. She's level 1. Like, she's literally just in there for the Lord bonus, which I think is quite a cool touch. It does give you a reason to keep some of the rares. But yeah, I agree. Beyond a few, which have got quite cool kits, there's not that much variety. And honestly, I'm not seeing, in terms of, you know, some of the guys that have got access to some of the future champions that are coming down the line, the future heroes, it doesn't seem to be rares in the mix. It's all mainly legendaries, actually, that are coming down the line.
Yeah, there's definitely it's a little bit of a mental adjustment, but at the end of the day too, I feel like they're also, I don't know. I think the stats back this up too, but they're quite easier to summon legendaries and epics in this game versus raid, you know?
Yeah, certain. I mean, just mainly though because of the quantity, right? So it's
Yeah.
because actually the summoning rates are very similar in terms of
Yeah. I feel like they're more
rates and stuff
generous
like
with
that.
the crystals, though, summoning crystals in this game
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
raid
yeah.
and shards, you know?
And I like the fact that you can literally you pull a bunch of rares. You could just say, well, you know what? I'm just going to sell those for diamonds, which then I can use to summon again. So
Yeah.
you know,
It's a nice
so
cycle. Yeah.
your point is like, well, the rares are not that good. They're not, but actually, you can just sell them off, and then you get yourself some more summons to try and get some of the heroes you actually want to kind of collect, which I think is a cool system. I think, and it does it in quite a quick way, so you're not kind of, you know, you're not having to spend a load of time going through one by one. It's literally just press a button, they're all in there, and then you just pick out the ones that you don't want to get rid of, and away you go. You just made yourself, in my case here, 1,500 diamonds.
Yep. No, 100%. 100%. Do you like, I know you don't like the tide, really.
I don't like the tide.
From my video, but
yeah.
you've got to like the talent tree. Like, I love that. Like,
yeah, well, this is what disappoints me, honestly, because with the tide, I feel like it's a game mode waiting to happen. Like, I feel like the concept of it, I love the whole kind of like a talent tree with all of these different aspects is cool. But I feel like I could put my talents into any single thing and it would make no difference.
What do you mean? Make no difference in terms of
the outcome? Because I feel like it's literally just a case of, is my current BP higher than the suggested BP? Well, yes or no? And then I win or I don't.
The tide talents are going to make a difference, like on your account, you know, overall. But I hear you in terms of, we talked about this, you know, on my video as well. It's definitely going to have an impact. I feel like you'll get to a point where strategy will be more apparent or obvious.
Yeah.
Not to say that I am, you know, in the leaderboard of most. I think it's like 138 or 140 at the time of this in terms of the highest.
Yeah, 134 on mine is the highest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm stuck at 103 right now.
Right.
And I'm starting to see where, okay, crap, I can't just blindly spam anymore, and I need to actually think strategically. So I think that maybe you'll enjoy it a little bit more when you get to that point. But in terms of the talent tree, I love that aspect of the game. I just wish, and I'm not sure if this is the point you're making, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more branching there.
Well, this is exactly my point. Like, I feel like it's
you're eventually going to get them all.
It's a game mode that is waiting to be cool. That's what I feel like. It's like if they made talents, you know, if I think about games that do this really well, like, you know, Path of what is it? Path of Exile? Yeah, Path of Exile that does kind of like talent tree really well. If you look at Diablo 4, games like that where it's like you can go in a number of different avenues and you would have a very different result. You know, it might be that one was very heavy focused on mages, and you get different kind of like almost like this summoning of gods or whatever it is that we're kind of like grabbing. They could do this really well, but I've probably got very similar talents selected to anyone else who's done what I've done so far.
Yeah.
You know, and so by that point, the talent tree becomes, for me, like, it's just, you know, it is what it is. I love the fact that you pick up these kind of like the Ancient Guard and, you know, those sort of dudes that you get onto your board. I just don't know that they really make as big an impact as they should do. Like, I feel like there should be definite time in there around, if I drop it at this point, it's going to do this. You know, I need this to drop at this point to win the level or something. And for me, probably because I'm not there yet, but it doesn't do that for me.
Understood.
I'd like to sort of delve into a bit of actual gameplay here between the kind of raid, because obviously the gameplay is very different, right? So, I mean, one's more of a tower defense game in Watcher. The other one's kind of like more of a, I guess, you know, wave by wave of content. How do you feel you kind of like transitioned into Watcher versus raid? Did you find that hard to transition, and did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed it. I found it refreshing. I played tower defense games, but nothing like Watcher of Realms, you know, with that fantasy feel and, well, all that gotcha hero collector feel, you know. So I loved it. I found it pretty intuitive. You know, you plop your heroes down and you figure out what they do, and you know, you kind of don't know what the heck you're doing in the early game. I actually really enjoy that they they have the very clear delineation of classes in this game because it becomes very intuitive what they do. Okay, a healer, a defender, a fighter. I can understand that intuitively without having to like, you know, deep dive into the nuances. So I really like that about the game. And I feel like, frankly, I know this isn't exactly your question, but I feel like I really prefer how Watchers just splits everything out in the raid section. Like everything's obvious. I don't need to, in raid, I need to know that I need to farm spider to get silver. There's no gold, but in Watchers, if I need gold, I go to the gold raid. If I need experience, I go to the experience raid. I don't go to campaign 12-3 brutal, you know? So I feel like it's a lot more intuitive. If I need to promote a mage, I go to the mage promotion, you know, like it's nice and easy. I really love that.
And
it feels more advanced. It feels like a lot better, you know, of an experience. And then the actual gameplay, I don't know if it's, I don't want to be fair to raid here, right? Because I think that raid, where they excel over Watchers is their boss battles, right? Like waves in raid are not interesting. You know, it's like, okay, waves, yay, you know, champions, you know, but the boss battles are intricate. They're very well designed for the most part. They require specific skills that multiple champions usually have. So you have some flexibility there. And I think that that's where raid really excels. However, every other area, I feel like Watchers is better because there's a lot more strategy that goes into the overall, let's just call it wave, right? Even if their bosses might be a little bit lackluster, even though some of them are pretty cool. You know, placement timing is important. Recalling and cycling your heroes can be important as you progress in this game. What heroes you're bringing into battle, when you're using them. Like there's so many factors that makes it feels like you have much more of a hand strategically on what actually happens during a fight versus raid, you know?
Yeah, I love, so the fights are actually a bit longer in Watchers. But I don't feel like I'm like watching the clock thinking, Christ, you know, I've had enough of this. Because I'm so in the moment of I'm waiting to use my ults at the right time. You know, like to your point, I'm dropping heroes that perhaps just give me costs so that I can actually put the right units down later on. I'm recalling heroes at certain points to get
ultimates.
Ultimate dropping. Like, and actually in raid you're controlling 5 heroes and all of their abilities. Versus Watchers, where you're controlling up to 8 really at any time, but you only control ultimates. And I was talking to a friend about this, and I was saying like both systems are really cool, right? Both systems give you a certain amount of depth. You know, Watchers, you've got depth in terms of positioning and when you're going to drop your ults. Versus raid, where you've got a lot more skills to manage. And I don't think any system is right or wrong, but for me right now, I'm surprised how much I'm enjoying the strategy in Watchers. Of this kind of system where I'm only really controlling ults in terms of when I'm going to press a button, but you know, that makes a big difference. You know, if you think about,
I think that you're right. That's actually a really good point. But when you think about like placement, and not just placement, but like I guess positioning, you know, and what heroes you put next to each other, right? There's a lot of, I feel like that makes up for the fact that you can't control anything other than the ultimates. And when you add, to me, where it tips in favor of Watchers for me is the time element. Like you always feel like there's pressure, you know, unless you're just clearing levels that you've already cleared, right? Like raid, you can sit there literally for 2 hours and think about what skill you want to use next on any given champion, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I could sit there and okay, do I want to use the A3 or A2? And I could just like it's a very casual, idle game. When in terms of the gameplay, because you have all the time in the world to think about things, but it always feels like I mean, like the waves are coming no matter what. You can slow it down to 1x speed, but I can't be the only one out there who sometimes I'll just kind of hover just to make time go really slow motion while I think about what I'm going to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I really like that aspect of the game, you know. But it's a good comparison about like having control over what they do versus not having control, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I've been pleasantly surprised. Like in terms of, there's some stuff that could be done better. Like I don't, and it's little things, but I don't feel like calling something Dear Raid 1, Dear Raid 2. Like it's not very imaginative in terms of like names. And to your point, you know, when bosses come out in Watchers, I don't feel necessarily like I'm in a boss fight all the time.
Yeah.
You know, whereas
Like the Earthquake dude, I feel like he's a boss. He feels boss-like, but not always, you know?
Yeah. But definitely the gameplay side of things, I'm finding way more enjoyment in the kind of strategic challenges of watchers and when to drop ults and, you know, what the ults do and how to synergize them together and that type of stuff. And you do get this kind of feeling of I am progressing right now, you know, or I'm not, but it's like, you know, I can see progress when I'm kind of like pushing different combinations together and, you know, different kind of ultimates lapping on top of each other, which is really fun. It's like really cool. And probably something, I guess I've played Raid for a long time. It's probably something I've not really felt in Raid for a while.
Yeah.
Mainly because it just feels so fresh.
Yeah, it really does. And it's hard not to have a natural biases towards the new relationship, right? Like, to be fair,
this is it. Yeah.
I don't want to be unfair to Raid because the first time that I saw, you know, a Doom Tower boss, or for the first time, I'm sure I was like, whoa, you know, like, and there's a lot involved. And obviously, like we already mentioned, bosses are so much cooler in Raid, you know, but it also gives me a little bit of like excitement for the future. I guess this is kind of a both way type situation in terms of like, it could go either way, right? But like, where do they go from here? It's a brand new game, relatively speaking, Watcher. And we already know where Raid's kind of where they've been and where they want to go. But I don't know much about like what big features can you add to this foundation and infrastructure right now in Watchers. You know, what would it look like? I guess I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm just saying I can't think of where they would go from here. Can you?
Yeah. Well, I guess something which I'm surprised about is they've been pretty imaginative with Arena, and I didn't really know how they would
about Arena.
How they would go with Arena in what is a tower defense game. Like, it's quite a tough thing to do because really there's no PvP in Watchers. Let's be honest. Like, your Arena is PvE,
a race. Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually like it. Like, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. You have to change your teams up each week because there's a different mode. You have to think about the heroes you're bringing in as well. The race element means that you do have to be strategic in terms of, am I going to try and go hard early, or perhaps build a team that's going to be insanely strong later on? So you might be falling behind on purpose early with the knowledge of, you know, building a team that's going to win later on. I actually, personally, I love the Arena system, but it does have a couple of flaws, like most of these things. Like, you know, if I think about the comparison, which we're doing here in Raid, I don't think do Arena that great, really. I think Arena is probably one of the weakest areas of the game, but they do at least have like a leaderboard that you're trying to win on a weekly basis. This kind of like flat top tier. I honestly don't feel like that's that compelling. But I don't know. I mean, what's your views like putting one against the other?
I had a very similar first feeling that you did. I remember actually I was talking to shout out to Oliver. Oliver was one of the first person that I spoke to from Muton about the game. And I remember he asked if I liked the game. And my first piece of feedback was like, I think Arena, I find it very slow and boring.
Right.
And now I actually don't feel that way anymore. Similar to you, it kind of grew on me, you know. I'm used to fast Arena battles where I can speed farm a Great Hall or something.
Yeah.
And going directly against other champions or other heroes versus this, where it's much slower. Obviously, it can take 3 to 4 minutes to do one Arena battle, which is the case for Raid, but not until you get to the end game. But this can feel like that immediately. But the only thing I'd say about the Arena experience, the PvP experience in this game, what I would hope for is maybe a little bit more of a robust reward system. Some people like that it's attached to the Great Hall in Raid. Some people don't like it, but I wish there was like another tier type option, like something to work towards long term, you know?
Yeah.
Also, though, I just want more diversity, man. Like, personally, I don't know if this is if people agree or disagree with this, but I wish that the maps were quite different. Different like win conditions, you know, different aesthetics about them. You know, it does get a bit, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot more they could do.
Same thing, you know. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
but that's an area they can build on. To your point, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I do. Because at first glance, I was like, I'm not really sure about this Arena.
Yeah, but you're right. It is kind of you're like, okay, it's
Yeah,
fun. It's
but it
fun,
definitely has grown on me, in terms of my enjoyment of it, and the challenge, like the strategic challenge of it, is actually
Yeah.
way better than I originally gave it credit for.
Yeah.
Which I've kind of found out, I guess, over the last week or so as I start to build teams out.
Yeah.
Um,
How do you feel about the resources in this game, Hades, in terms of like in Watcher? How do you feel about the amount of, stamina versus gold versus experience? Like those three, do you think
yeah,
that there's a massive shortage, or do you think that it's appropriate, fair?
I think generally good. I think they give you a lot of resources throughout the week. Like, I get a lot of free summons. I get a lot of diamonds throughout the week, all that type of stuff. The one that lets itself down for me is gold. I feel like I struggle with leveling gear like pretty hard. Like I have put full days worth of stamina just into gold farming, and I feel like I'm never above like 3 million gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
the other
agree.
stuff, I
I
think
agree.
stamina is actually pretty good, and they give you, within the shop, the opportunity to buy up stamina pots, and you earn them through quests and stuff like that. So there's a good amount, through your kind of idle rewards, you get a decent chunk of stamina there as well. And generally, it's good. But yeah, for me, gold's the one that currently is a bit out of balance.
I agree. I agree. I think they need to tweak the rewards and goal. Like, I've only been playing for a couple months, so like I feel
Yeah.
like, but I feel like we are making demands. But I feel like they need to tweak those gold. I think the gold is a bit too short in this game. The caveat though is there's free gear removal, which is insane.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So once you've leveled it, that's it.
Yeah,
Like, if you've got,
that's so it's hard to judge too harshly when they have that going for them. I will say though that gear in general, I feel like there's a lot they can do there. I mean, it's definitely way simpler and less interesting than Raid in Watcher, in terms of just, I mean, there's less pieces, there's no glyphs, there's no, I feel like some of the sets aren't very compelling. So I feel like Raid, obviously with their forge and everything like that, I feel like they're definitely way more advanced in terms of, and I guess it kind of all ties into the gear Raid 1, 2, 3. Like it's just, it's very basic, and it seems like that's an area they can definitely grow,
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things which give Raid way more depth of character builds, and one is gearing. I think that their kind of mastery trees do a lot as well in terms of Raid, so you can build the same hero 5 different ways. And actually get really different types of resource, really different uses out of them. So you could build someone as a tanky type of character, you could build them as a support unit, you could build them damage dealer,
high resistance,
in sets which do like stuns and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that's something that is to come in Watchers, because they've actually got a really good base foundation of variety of things to add to your hero around, awakening and artifacts and the skill trees and stuff. But yeah, gearing is definitely somewhere where there's a lack of complexity, maybe by design or whatever. But yeah, the fact that all damage dealers kind of want the same stats, and and the gear sets, they've got different gear sets, but it feels like you're kind of aiming for the same pieces on.
You're right. It doesn't.
Everyone,
You can't change the complexity of your whole team and strategy based on one gear set like you can in Raid. So that's something that you're right. I mean, I guess it can kind of answer my previous point about what could they work towards in this game. Like that's an area that they can improve on greatly.
Yeah, and I guess when we come to things like events, fusions, summons, pitching the two against each other, what's your thoughts?
Well, Raid is having this big quality of life on events this week, so it's hard to judge. But my first experience with Watchers was really great when it comes to events. First of all, I found the rewards fairly anecdotally because it was like the first 2 weeks I was playing, but I found the rewards to be much better, generally speaking, than what Raid gives in their events. Like I was getting I got a legendary skill dust. I was getting really good stuff. Or a skill stone, I should say. And then I love that they had, and I don't know if this is going to be like all the time or what, but I really love the redeem shop. So you get a currency and you can choose how to spend it.
Yeah.
I love that autonomy,
Yeah. I like the fact that they give you a calendar in advance as well. It's like, I
yeah.
know that from, it's actually from tomorrow now, but I know that from tomorrow, that's when I'm going to start leveling my dudes, because there is an event that's dropping that's giving me a legendary steel crystal. They're quite tough to get. And then not only do they give you the kind of advanced warning of what's coming, but they give you like the best rewards that you're going to get from that event. So if I look at one that's dropping on Sunday, it's like, okay, Tales of the Smith. There's some summons in there, but there's not going to be like a big reward crystal, so it's not as big a deal to kind of make sure I'm doing it. Versus, you know, the Corridor of Glory, where it's like, damn, I need to focus in for that one. You know,
you're right. You're right. That calendar, it's like, it's weird because sometimes when games throw too much information at you, it can just be like all white noise. But I feel like it's well done. To your point, it's like even the little calendar with the dates and the charts and the whatever. Like I feel like it's all very easily consumable. You know?
Yeah. Whereas if I'm looking at Raid here, everything in terms of forewarning at the moment, and maybe this is going to change because they've spoken about a new kind of quality of life change on events.
Yeah.
But basically, we get 24 hours notice, and you know, you don't have enough time to make qualified decisions with 24 hours notice. You've already used your stuff by that point, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Any other kind of like specific areas you want to talk? I mean, we've not spoken about guild boss versus clan boss, which I guess we should.
I feel maybe I just haven't progressed enough in Guild Wars, but I feel like Guild Wars, the first thing that I'll say about it is I'm a little underwhelmed with the rewards, I think. But maybe again, I'm not on the highest difficulty, so I don't know.
Okay. How far are you through the difficulty stuff?
I don't have it in front of me. The second to last.
Okay.
But I don't get the full chest on it. I'm not getting the full chest on it.
Yeah. So I think we're in the same place.
Okay.
I mean, it's still for me one of the areas where you've got the chance. So I'm fighting Nightmare 3, and I'm getting, for one key, I'm getting like the second chest up. So I'm nowhere near tapping out. But
so what
I've got the chance to get the legendary steel crystals.
Okay, maybe I just haven't gotten one yet, and that's why I think...
Yeah, maybe it's the drop rates, but
which I
would say, comparing it to Raid, like, what do we want from Raid's top clan boss, we call it, but what do we want?
We want sacreds, aka legendary summons, and we want skills, the legendary skill, and they have those.
So they're both in the mix.
All right. Fair enough. I still find Raids a bit more compelling, but it's hard. You know, it's hard because I know it more. I know it better. You know.
Yeah.
What about you?
I guess we're used to now farming the highest level and getting the best chest from Raid every day.
Very true. Yeah.
You know, you're gonna see the legendary stuff. You know, the skill crystals and the summons more frequently. I think just because of the level. And maybe if we were farming Nightmare 4, getting a max chest every day. You know, don't forget, it took a long time in Raid to get to that level that you could farm.
Oh yeah,
the best possible rewards every single day. So,
what do you think about the strategy wise comparatively?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is the best bit of content in Raid that exists in terms of like a boss mechanic. I think Clan Boss was always my favorite content. So it's a tough one for me because I do really like the guild boss. I like the fact that you can bring very different teams and get really good results. And I like the kind of ability to pull units off of the board to make space for someone else coming on and all that type of stuff. So I think there's a lot in it in terms of strategy. I would find it hard to pick one above the other, honestly. I think they're both really strong. What do you think?
I mean, like, this is such a cop-out because it took 3 years for them to add this, but I like Hydra better than Guild Boss. I like Raid's Hydra better than Guild Boss and Watcher. And I think that if we're just comparing at launch, I think that probably maybe give the small edge to Watchers on Guild Boss compared to Clan Boss, Demon Lord.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you can build... I feel like Raid with speed tuning and stuff like that, they have a lot of strategy. You know, I think that it's very tough to compare. They're different. They're quite different, you know, but
different, yeah.
And here's the thing on Guild Boss, I just want to be real, you know, is because I have not experienced the end game appropriately. It feels almost unwise to speak on it because I feel like there's a lot of more opportunity than I'm giving it credit for like a really high level strategy. Like I say, oh, there's speed tuning in Raid, but not in Watchers, but there could be speed tuning, you know, like it could be after
the speed tuning is more about when the ults drop and that type of stuff.
Yes. So there could be the same, if not higher level of strategy. And my intuition says there might be in Watchers, you know?
Interesting. Well, look, I mean, we've probably gone over half an hour already, and I feel like we could just keep chatting.
Right.
Yeah, we probably need to rate it at some point. So I think that's a good time to kind of call it a day. Is there any
Sounds
other
good.
kind of like, observations that you just want to throw out there before we close off?
No, man, I think we discussed quite a bit on the
Yeah.
in the games, both of them, and I think that it's important to say again that I I picked up Watchers not looking for a an escape or another option from Raid, right?
Sure.
The best thing is I really truly believe these are like the perfect type of games to play together. Like if we're going to play two games in this genre because they feel so different.
They're different enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
similar enough that you can just pick them up and understand, you know? So I really
Yeah.
enjoy like I don't know, it's embarrassing, but like I'll have my iPad on one game, and my phone on the other game, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think they're perfect games to play together. So it's really not a knock at either. And people probably picked that up from this conversation.
Yeah, this is literally, I'm just showing what my screen normally looks like. And they're both on, man. They're both on.
Yep.
Like, I'm doing different stuff. And
Yep.
that's a cool thing about both these games. Obviously, they can both be auto-friendly when you want it. And you can put time into one or the other when you want to try and really progress, which for me is a must with, the line of work we do and the busy lives we got with families, all that type of stuff. But
100%. Yeah.
yeah, look, dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks.
We do have a collab, as I've mentioned already, back on Ash's channel where we talk about all of the things we wouldn't do again if we were starting out. Definitely go and watch that and sub to Ash as well. Great content over there on Watchers. But yeah, dude, thanks so much.
Thank you, Hades.
Till next time. I'll see you all later.